Well, I hope you can see how easily that's working, melting and conforming. It's really kind of enjoyable at this time. I mean, a lot of times when I work with resin, it's a little bit stressful. You're under a time constraint, and you've got a lot to do, and you want it to be just so, and you know, for whatever reason, and it just you have to hurry. This time I'm not having to hurry so much, and that's kind of nice because I'm not so tied into if there's an air gap below it too much, and I'm not so tied into I'm gonna have to sand and do all these other things to the top. I'm kind of just like, it's gonna be what it's gonna be, and I think it's gonna be fine because it just has to provide a shade cover for the actual plastic. So So what I'm doing now is what's called pre-wetting, and normally we would have set up a station here on the bench, covered it with plastic, so we could pre-wet on that, and then just bring it over and place it. So, and the pre-wetting is just to make sure that you get plenty of resin in the fabric. And in a lot of projects that's really important. So this one we're just kind of wanting to float over some of these parts in the back here which hide the hinge. See, now we want it to come down a little farther. I want that to come down a little farther. There we go. You want to make sure this covers over that part of the hinge and keeps that plastic viable. And again, we're poking in, we're pushing everything down. Now another thing you do when you have a problem like this on this corner is you can, with the trop strand mat, you can just physically tear it and then overlap it. Or if you know you're going to have that problem ahead of time, you can cut it. Put a little cut there, a little 45-degree cut, kind of like a pleat. Kind of like a pleat when you're sewing. Alright, I'm looking back. Always be looking back to see where you are to make sure nothing's changing. Wow, that's looking so good. Let's go ahead and put a couple of big pieces across the top. Go back over here now. So I'm trying to make sure this overlaps just the right amount. So there is overlap. Because I want this fabric to overlap itself, bond to the piece next to it. Yeah. And then build onto the piece next to it. So like I say, you gotta get some resin on these before you can tuck them. Get it to follow the edge. Get it to melt a little bit. All right. Now, I'm sure a lot of people are saying I'm doing this wrong, and I probably am doing it wrong. But I also know it's going to work. because I know this particular material is very, very forgiving for, especially for something like this. So yeah, you can get away with a lot with polyester resins and epoxies and stuff like that. Now this particular resin we're using is not a tabletop resin. This isn't the kind of resin where you encapsulate a huge amount of material and you know you have those beautiful tabletops that you see. That's a different kind of resin. Same family of resins, different chemistry. This cannot do that job without major problems. This resin is a laminating resin. It's only to be used in small buildups. If you were to come in here and try to build up a lot, you know, 3, 4, 5 layers in one sitting, it would start smoking. And what happens is the chemistry, the chemical reaction of the MPK and the polyesters, it starts to generate heat. In fact, I'm a little concerned that the heat might start doing stuff and make this a fail. And so we might know this is a fail in a little while here. And yeah, it looks great right now, but if it starts doing weird, wackily things, then I try to put too much resin on at once. And the way to do this in the future might be to just one little bit at a time, do the edges, come back, do the more of the edges. So time will tell if I'm getting this right or not. I'm trying not to put more on than necessary, not trying to build up too much resin in this coat. So I figure if I can get the first layer on without any problems, I can make it thicker on the second layer. And from the look of it, I'm probably only going to put 2 layers on here. And I was going to, like I say, I was going to use the fiber material, but I just don't think that's going to work. There's too many corners and too many bends that make it a problem. Ugh, what a mess. Alright. Look at that. Yummy, yummy. Now, it may not look that good to you, but it really is conforming well to the bends and the curves and not trying to sprout back up every 2 seconds. And that's nice. Alright, we got one little strip down the middle here. Alright, and we have extra resin. So I hope you noticed that I taped off everything else. That is to help clean up afterwards. Because once this stuff cures, it's very, very strong. So you want to make sure that all your work after this isn't going to be such a challenge. Like, I know I'm going to have to sandpaper this a little bit. And maybe even have to paint it. get back down there, you. Beef up this corner a little bit. I'm just going to want to put that one over here. Oh, get down there. Oh, yeah. These fibers make it really fun. Yeah, that's the word, fun. So I don't know if you can see it, but you know, chop strand mat is basically a mat of fibers loosely attached to each other, and they do love to come separate once you get the resin on them and sticky fingers. I don't know if you can see that. See that on my hand. See all those fibers on there? Now when this dries, any fiber that has resin on it kind of becomes like a pin and can, you know, stab you pretty well. So you'll definitely go around and make sure that you've sanded off or ground off all of that stuff before you consider yourself finished. I'm going to go ahead and stick another layer on this over here because I didn't put it on high enough. I'll use this guy. Or low enough, I should say. Oh no, I just ruined my roll of tape. So anyway, I got that tape on there, and that'll help for later on because I don't want to have to try to break any of this resin off the metal. I want that to be nice and clean to accept the boat grade caulking that I'll be using to install this skylight to the roof of the camper. Now the roof on my camper is aluminum, and that's nice. It's not a rubber roof. I'm not very fond of rubber roofs because rubber roofs on RVs are like plastic vents on RVs. They're designed to go bad, and they cost an absolute fortune and are a huge amount of work, and that's why they cost so much. And it's really not something that you can do in your driveway, although people do it in their driveway all the time. It's just quite a bit of work. So, having been there, done that, it's quite a bit of work. And generally, by the time you get around to replacing the roof, lots of things have gone bad with the roof. So that not only are you having to put a new roof on, you're having to fix a lot of things as well. A lot of rot, a lot of damage, a lot of repair. And the last one I did for myself, the last roof I repaired, I tore the rubber roof off, fixed the subsurface really well, and then put a latex roof on. And that has worked out so well. Not a silicone, a latex roof. And the latex roof, you know, I did a few things. I should have done a video, but this was years before. And yeah, it's worked out real well. It's much less expensive than a rubber roof. It can be repaired in spot repairs. So, you know, latex roofs are great. Now, latex roofs are, you know, you don't see them on campers, but you see them on houses a lot now. And my biggest concern was, well, maybe the wind blows it off and that's why they don't use it. I think the reason they don't use it is there's no money in it for the companies after the fact. And the rubber roofs are very easy to install in the factory, whereas the latex roofs, you know, they take many layers to build up to the thickness you want for a long duration roof. Well, if you're doing it yourself, that's not really a problem. I'm kind of just trying to use up the resin and the material I have right now, because I have it. And this stuff's cheap, this stuff isn't. So using up the resin and finding good applications for it. Trying to make sure I have enough overlap below the plastic. So like I said before, this is a laminating resin. It's designed for you to put layer upon layer upon layer. Not necessarily right away. So if you don't add wax to this material, to this resin, it can be stuck right back on top of this. So let me try to re-say that. Let me get this on there. Alrighty, so because this is a laminating resin, laminating resins are designed for building stuff like big ass boats and little ass boats, and they're, when you fiberglass a boat, you build it up in layer by layer by layer by layer, and a lot of times, you know, you put one layer on one day and you don't come back until the next day. With laminating resins, you can get up to, I think it's 24 hours and put on another layer. There still is enough stickiness or non-cured material there that the next layer will melt into the previous layer, etc., etc. So each layer you're putting down is melting into the layer before it. And so when you're done, you end up with a very solid layer system of fabrics that are all, you know, when it comes to a boat, you have different types of fabrics laid in different patterns to give it strength. And that's why fiberglass boats can be very, very strong, certain parts of it. Phenomenally strong, and depending on if they're cored and double layered, etc. Just anyway, extremely strong stuff. But the whole point of this is that because I did not add wax to this, which would be the element that I add in the last layer, the wax locks off air from the surface and the resin will fully cure. It'll cure to a sandable state. So, but right now, because I haven't added wax, I can come back up till sometime tomorrow and maybe even much later than that and add another layer to this and it will bond just fine. I'm probably going to start adding another layer to this in half an hour or so, just because I need to get it done, because I need to put it on the camper as soon as I can. In case it rains, because right now there's a big hole in the roof of my camper, and if it rains, it's all going to kind of go in that hole. So, and you know what's nice about this stuff, this will be ready to install if not later today, tomorrow, if I get the next layer on in a reasonable amount of time. So right now we're going through and we're pushing down some of the hairs and adding a little thickness in spots. You know, I've got a little bit here. Let's go ahead and double this up if we can get it. Let go. It's starting to lock off. It hasn't turned to gum yet, so it's still doing well. Still a lot of magic in this. Maybe not now, but yeah. So I'm seeing that the results of my mix of how much EPK I put in here, I think it's just the right amount, because it hasn't, you know, immediately locked off, and it's still workable less than 20 minutes, I'm assuming, later. And that's good. That means that it's not going to cure too fast, it's not going to cure too slow. It is definitely curing. In a minute here, I won't want to touch this more because it'll just make more of a mess. But until then, I can keep trying to knock down any strands that are sticking up. That one. That one. Because when I go to put the next layer on, if I wait too long or don't get all these strands down, I'll be fighting that strand in the cured resin to put the next piece on top. And depending on how long I wait, if I wait an hour, maybe longer, and let it harden up, I could just run a piece of sandpaper over the top of this and knock off any of those strands. But wow, I think this turned out great. I'm interested to see what the temperature is at this point. So now this material, throw away. So I get these from Smart and Final. They're food container buckets for restaurant use, I think. They come in baggies of 100 or 50, something like that. Inexpensive, and the resin doesn't melt it right away. If you leave the resin in here for a while, I believe it will start to melt it. But in the terms of the time that we're working with it, there's no change in it. Actually, I don't think it will melt this. I think it might melt it if you leave enough in there. But I tend to use it all as much as I can, as soon as I can, so that we get full benefit out of all that resin. Because I'm a cheapwad and like to get my value out of the materials I use. I'm also the kind of person that I don't want to throw too much away, because away is never truly away. It goes to the dump. The dump is not away, it's just a pile under the ground somewhere that someday someone will have to deal with. So, I'm a very big fan of upcycling. I try to use materials, found materials, wherever I can. This entire enclosure, very simple, it's a monkey hut on poles, and I'll explain that at some later time. Found material, built it from scrap. Cost me nothing other than welding. Tarp, of course, costs a lot of money, but then this is the third tarp I've had on here in 15 years. And the next tarp I put on, a friend of mine showed me a trick to latex the tarp with the latex roof paint before you install it. You know, lay it out flat on the ground, latex it with the latex roof paint, and it'll last 4 times or more longer than your normal silver tarps would last. Phenomenal, phenomenal. Okay, so I think we're probably done. I'm not seeing any obvious stragglers. Let me go ahead and see if I can take these off. All right. Don't touch anything without gloves on. I always make that mistake because right now they're fairly clean. See that? Fairly clean hands. If you touch anything, you'll get the resin, you'll get the colorant, and it just doesn't want to come off that readily. Anyway, so what we're going to do, I'm going to go ahead and pull you off of here. I'm going to give you a nice close look, and we'll come back again in a little while, but let's give you a look first, okay? So here comes the wiggle. All right, let's get over here. So you can see that surface. I guess you can see that surface. I won't know until I edit this if I'm just being silly and trying to show you things. But it's glued on there real well. It's melted all the strands down. Not a lot of hairs hanging out. All right. And I've gone a little long here on the edge so I can come back and just trim that with the grinder sander. And like I say, I'm going to put one more coat on this. Let's go ahead and put you back in the holder. So, well, maybe I'll do a little quick tour. So this is my MPK bottle. You squeeze this, it puts MPK up into the top through the little spigot. That's a handy thing to have. This is the wax. And you add just a little bit of this to your resin product, and it will allow that resin to fully cure. And you've already seen that. You've already seen the acetone. Now, if I was going to try to save that brush, I would put it in my acetone bucket here. And this is the fiber we're using, the chopped strand mat. You can see it's very thin. It's fibery, comes apart. You really don't want to use ungloved hands on this stuff. But a couple of layers of this, not that expensive. When I go to put this in the storeroom, I will actually roll it up around a tube, because if you leave it flat like this, it will make creases in the folded edges, and that's not good. You don't want to fight that later on. So I bought enough material to do all the skylights in my 2 RVs, assuming this is going to work. And if it doesn't, you know, I can use this stuff for numerous things. And resin, oh my gosh, it's such a fun product to work with. Although, there's the smell, there's the sanding, itchy, scratchy, gets all over everything, ruins your clothes. If you're any kind of enclosed area or you're doing any kind of sanding, use a mask. You don't want this stuff in your lungs. You got to be careful with MPK. These are chemicals. These are dangerous chemicals. This is not stuff for kids. This is stuff for people that are careful. So, but that said, there's so many things you can do with this, including RV repair, RV roof repair as a substrate repair. When you've got a surface that just doesn't, it's just going to be a nightmare to fix. Drape some fiberglass over it. Get it starred, get it firm, sand it flat, put your roofing compound down on top of that. A lot less work than it is to try to do all the bondos and things like that. Got neighbors making noise. Anyway, we're going to let this set up for a while. So stand by or join us for the next one.